A while back, I participated in a panel about pop culture, and the subject for this particular discussion was, what is the perfect film? Now, a perfect anything is, almost by definition, impossible. A perfect movie with all its components and moving parts especially so. But given the subject, people brought what they considered to be the closest a film comes to achieving perfection. Someone said The Godfather Part 2. Someone else suggested Big Trouble in Little China. And I brought what I thought would be a fun, perhaps unorthodox selection, My Cousin Vinny. It was a good discussion as we all took turns pleading our case for why our movie was the perfect film. But no sooner had I made my case that My Cousin Vinny was, in fact, perfection, that I began seeing it for all its flaws. So let's ruin My Cousin Vinny. My Cousin Vinny, released in 1992, is a sort of dark comedy that opens with the murder of an innocent convenience store owner in rural Alabama. It stars Joe Pesci as Vincent Gambini, a Brooklyn auto mechanic turned lawyer who has yet to practice any law since finally passing the New York bar exam. When his cousin and friend are arrested for first-degree murder in the Deep South, Vinny, who has never tried any case, let alone one for first-degree murder, turns up to defend them, accompanied by his fiancée played by Marissa Tomei. It's your classic fish-out-of-water, in-over-my-head tale, in which Pesci's character is forced to simultaneously become acclimated to the exhaustive procedures of a practicing attorney, while also navigating the culture shock of being a New Yorker in the Deep South. And in the balance of all this are the lives of two young innocent men, who are in danger of being sentenced to death. Now, on paper, this might all sound like the makings for one of the worst movies ever made, which to me is just another testament to just how damn great this movie is. Because everything from the story to the dialogue, the acting, the comedy, the setting are near perfection. This was, to the people who grew up with this movie, one of the most quotable films of the era.
Did you say utes?
Yeah, 2 utes.
What is a ute?
Oh, excuse me, Your Honor. 2 youths.
In fact, the storytelling in this movie is so good that there are only a handful of times where anyone actually does anything besides talk. There's a scene where Vinny punches a guy in a bar, there's a scene where he gets a suit out of the trunk and falls, there's a scene where he knocks over the judge's chess pieces, and that's kind of all that happens. Everything else is dialogue and delivery. By the way, a shout out to the late great Fred Gwynne as Judge Chamberlain Haller. He passed away shortly after the movie was released. This was his last on-screen role, and I don't think the movie would be half as memorable without his screen presence playing off of Pesci's. But that's the basic setup for My Cousin Vinny. Joe Pesci's Vincent Gambini, a smooth-talking New Yorker, trying to talk his way into proving the innocence of his cousin and his girlfriend. Oh crap, I forgot to talk about Marissa Tomei. Yeah, you may know her as Aunt May in the Marvel Universe, but this is the role that single-handedly propelled her into stardom. Her career up to this point consisted of bit roles in some movies and TV shows, with My Cousin Vinny being her first opportunity to step into a major role. And her performance opposite a prime Joe Pesci was so memorable that she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Kinda cool to think of this film as being the intersection between two great careers. But anyway, that's as much as I can say about this movie and its history without spoiling it. So let's ruin it, and obviously there's going to be spoilers for a 30-year-old movie. Okay, let's start at the end of the movie and work our way backwards. When Vinny calls Lisa to the stand as the star witness. This is the culmination of the trial and the scene most people remember. Because in this cross-examination, Vinny not only proves his client's innocence and saves their lives, he is also able to patch things up with his fiancée by including her in the process. It's a charming culmination of everything built within the narrative, but also completely irresponsible. Let's rewind a few scenes to this moment. The prosecution's star witness has just testified that it was, in fact, the defendant's car that made the tire marks outside the convenience store just after the shooting. The trial has taken a recess for lunch, and Vinny is scrambling to find anything that can help in his defense. He's frustrated and takes it out on Lisa, who storms out. And it is here, at rock bottom, that he finds the solution. The classic eureka moment when he puts all the pieces together and solves the puzzle. But what was it? What did he see? And more importantly, what did he realize? And it is at this moment where the central flaw in My Cousin Vinny becomes apparent. So Vinny looks at the photos that his girlfriend,
My fiancé.
fiancé took. He immediately asks for a brief recess, writes something down on a piece of paper, and asks the local sheriff to investigate something. Then, he drags Lisa into the courtroom and compels her to testify. at which point she sees what he sees and explains why it couldn't have been the defendant's car that made those tracks. So we can assume that he saw what she sees, that being a mechanic himself, he knows exactly what she is going to say because he has the same level of expertise. This is later confirmed when he calls Sheriff Farley, and we learn that he had written down the make and model of the car that she identified before she identified it. Which begs the question, why call her as a witness? Why not recall the prosecution's expert automotive witness, which he eventually does anyway to confirm the veracity of her testimony? Remember, according to the story, he has very little time to prove his cousin's innocence. And as we've already seen on this particular day in these very court proceedings, being technically correct doesn't guarantee a just outcome.
Mr. Gambini?
Yes, sir.
That is a lucid, intelligent, well thought out objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Innocence does not guarantee justice. So what if the DA didn't dismiss the charges, and instead left it up to the jury to filter through these competing interpretations and decide for themselves? What if the inclusion of an out-of-work hairdresser's testimony was challenged on appeal and deemed inadmissible? The only logical answer to these questions I present as follows. When Vinny spotted the tire marks in the photos, he devised a plan to not only win the trial, but win back Lisa, which in essence means he risked the lives of two innocent men on a gamble to also win back his girlfriend.
He's my fiancé.
Sorry, fiancé. He could easily have proven their innocence without Lisa's testimony, but greedily gambled with the lives of two innocent men for his own selfish reasons. Or it's just a neat way to wrap up a story. One that maybe, just maybe, I ruined for you. Just a little bit.
Everything that guy just said is bullshit.